Welcome back to another instalment of New Zealand's Bird of the Week, where in this video I will be talking about the Hawkin's rail, large, recently extinct birds that have a long down-curved bill. I hope you enjoy. Hawkin's rails were large, flightless rails that occurred on the two largest islands in the Chatham Island group off the east coast of New Zealand's Chatham and Pitt, being the only member of the genus Diaphorapteryx. Males were considerably larger than females, with their distinct curved bills being around 2 cm longer, as the full length of 10 cm. They were also fairly large birds, with them being around 42 cm in length and around 2 kg in weight. Their wings are also greatly reduced, indicating a terrestrial lifestyle, with them being robust and having strong legs, with long toes to suit said environment, likely having a similar niche in their environment to the related weka on mainland New Zealand, which still survives today. Their most striking feature, as indicated in the introduction, were their long, decurved bills that have been interpreted as an adaptation for probing into the earth in search of invertebrates. And since said bill was longer and more curved than weka, they may have been less predatory of larger animals, also feeding on ground nesting birds and their chicks and lizards when they had a chance. Birds were a part of the vast radiation of rails that spread across Oceania, with the 2014 genetic study finding that the closest relatives were the invisible rails endemic to the island of Halmahera in the Maluku Islands in Indonesia, with the last-shared common ancestor existing around 10 million years ago. The two rails were in turn then found to be most closely related to the genus Gallerellus, which includes weka. Though they were never seen by Europeans, there are however some very interesting written accounts suggesting that they survived into the 19th century. Before this, the first bones of these birds were brought from the Chathams to Canterbury University in 1892 by William Hawkins. Amongst those was a distinctive skull, which was realised to have represented a now extinct species of rail. The remains were assigned to the new genus Diaphorapteryx in honour of Hawkins by ornithologist Henry Forbes, placing the bird in the same genus as the extinct red rail from the Mascarene Island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. Forbes proposed that a land bridge had once existed between Mauritius and the Chatham Islands. Remember, this was before plate tectonics and the science behind it was taken seriously, and that this land bridge was the lost continent of Antipodia. Later in 1892, on the advice of other ornithologist Edward Newton, the rail was reassigned into the separate genus now known as Diaphorapteryx, and while it later swapped back, the genus name is still used to this day. After this, two accounts were made that gave some much needed insights into their appearances, behaviours, and even their interactions with people, indicating they lived for longer than was thought. Humans that later came to be known as the Moriori arrived in the Chatham Islands group around 400 to 650 years ago, with the bones of Hawkin's rails being associated with human occupation sites, very likely being a part of their food middens as well. It was therefore thought that they became extinct hundreds of years before scientists could describe them, and it was long thought that they became extinct during the time between 1550 and 1700 AD. That was until two historic accounts were rediscovered relatively recently in 2004, which, based on their clarity and detail, provides a glimpse into what these animals would have appeared and behaved like, and how the hunting practices described made them extinct. The first account was identified in an 1895 letter from Sigvard Steinfard, sent to Walter Rothschild, stating that the Moriori name for the birds was Mehanui, nui meaning large, with them having a loud call akin to a tuek. It also goes on to describe them walking with their heads down, pecking into decayed wood on the ground, indicative of their foraging behaviour. They were also described as a dull brick red colour, akin to their relatives, the banded Chatham Island rails and weka, with the premaxillar bill tip plates further giving credence to this in that the reddish-brown colour is still preserved. The account also goes into detail on how they were hunted, as they would apparently be caught by walking towards them from the front, as they would be walking with their heads down pecking for food, allowing for them to be quietly approached and before being noticed would be caught by the neck and strangled, and it was noted that if they were approached from behind, they would quickly be detected and escape easily. A second, similar description of a previously unidentified Chatham Island bird is also linked to the Hawkin's rails, this one by Alexander Shand that was published in 1911 on Moriori cuisine. It also details another method of hunting said birds, this time also giving some insights into their behaviour, this time in their social behaviour, as birds were usually captured in their sleeping places or nests, where several 6 to 8 birds were observed huddled together, akin to pigs in a bed. Based on comparisons with the habits of other New Zealand rails, including weka, said colonies were most likely referring to family groups during the breeding season, making them easy targets. This hunting method involved observing said roosting sites, finding them through the clears, which is likely open breaks between forest cover. Hunters would then make long tracks up to the sites, carefully removing any sticks or obstructions which might alarm the birds. Then, in a stealthy rush, would then pounce on them, securing all in the nest. This strategy of targeting family groups in large numbers would have surely impacted their populations greatly, making it a stroke of luck that any substantial number of them could have survived for so long in the presence of people. Shan's account, while describing what is now known to be Hawkin's rails, seems to confuse many other species together, with him suggesting that they were large parrots, specifically some kind of kakapo, and while an extinct species of kaka is known from the islands, his account seems to be primarily based on a ground-dwelling supposedly wingless species, which fits in with the expected behaviour of a flightless rail. Kakapo are not considered to have ever been a part of the Chatham Islands fauna. He also mentions that their necks were said to be as long as a man's arm, which was likely confused with either the black swan or the poa, which could very well be the extinct and closely related New Zealand swan. The source of these accounts most likely came from the Moriori elder Hirawanu Tapu, one of the oldest on the island who was a noted source on Moriori tradition. The loud tuet cry may have also been the contact call through comparisons with weka and other rails, which was noted to be heard at great distances. The fact that detailed descriptions of live birds were still recalled clearly in the late 1800s suggests that the species survived well after initial Polynesian settlement, despite the documented human hunting pressure, and that they may have gone extinct just around the time when the first European colonisation of the area took place. And with that, I thank you for watching this instalment of New Zealand's Bird of the Week. For next time, you are now able to vote for the Selvins mollymawk. Typical, medium-sized albatrosses that once being conspecific with another species are now distinct, although they are still vulnerable. With that, I'll see you next time, whenever that may be.